Welcome back. Week 4 is in the books. And talk about a good week 4. Vikings are undefeated. They proved themselves against the Packers. Baltimore, Derrick Henry basically ran all over Buffalo, shut them down. The Lions had that little trick play, the touchdown to Jared Goff, which I thought was hilarious. And that's just a few things that happened. So, like, if there's highlights videos, if you want to go watch those are pretty cool. NFL.com, like the NFL, like YouTube channel has some of those as well. So, um, but week 4 is in the books. We're gonna go over matchups here on the video, just like the what happened in the previous week. Look over some of the awards, weekly reports, some performance, the power rankings, that typical stuff. Look for the next week, see what the matchups looking like there. But I do have a question for you. So, how are you guys' fantasy teams holding up right now? I mean, which I would say both, or which squad are you guys in? That's more like it. Which squad are you guys in? You in the 4-0 squad, 3-1, 2-2, 1-3, or 0-4? I mean, me, I'm 2-2. I'm starting to get on a couple game win streak, so I mean we're getting there. But um, all right, let's see. And before we begin, I just wanted to try something different. Uh, there's just like a little question of the day kind of thing. Uh, what is your favorite like smack talk saying? Like you go into in, you're in the little chat with your friends or buddies or some other people. Which like go to saying that you usually go to that it's like, are you kidding me, guys? Like something like that, but or something funny. So just leave it in the comments here. Mine is like I have the utmost confidence that your team will not do well today. So, but either way, something like that. So, but that being said, let's get started with the the matchups. Okay, so go back to week 4 here. That's right, touchdown. My thing's going off. But week 4's in the books. We'll go over the matchups here real quick. Big Papa defeated Ricky Bobby 141.07 to 128.06. Prescott had 19 points. Connor also had around 19 points. Aaron Jones had 17, about 18 points. Tyreek Hill did a little better, but still underperformed with 8.2 points. Hurry to it. Get back soon. Jaden Reed teed off for 7 for 139, to touchdown for 28. Pat Fryermuth had himself a game with 16.7 points here, scored a touchdown. Brian Robinson went off here for 21.3 fantasy points, 100 yards rushing and a touchdown, few receptions in the backfield. Green Bay's kicker here, Narvison, only with one, missed a couple field goals. If he would have made those, it would have put him in for 10 points, but hey, they would have won the game for the Packers. But and then Minnesota's defense looks like was started this week with 8.83 fantasy points. And then for Ricky Bobby here, Joe Burrow had 21 fantasy points, had himself a pretty good game, 232, a touchdown interception here. Singletary, I think, can't remember if he got hurt or not, but he didn't have a good game rushing really. Dallas defense kind of bottled up, forced Daniel Jones to pass. Achane, they kind of knew, like, you basically, the game plan for Tennessee. It's like, okay, Achane's basically the best player. One of their best players. Tyreek Hill just shut them down. They ain't going to chuck it deep. They're force them, like, basically uh, force the QB to pass the ball. But, yeah, only 5.9 points here. Nico Collins teed off with Tank Dell being out. 12 for 151, a touchdown for 34 points. That's a beauty of a game there. Drake London, 6 for 64 for 12.4. Brock Bowers, only 5.1 fantasy points. Could see an uptake this week that Devontae Adams isn't going to play. McLaurin, they said they wanted to get McLaurin the ball more, and they did. 7 for 52 and a touchdown for 18.2. Yadaway Koo had himself a good day for kicking field goals in their win over the Saints, and he finished with 20 fantasy points. 4 field goals here. So as you can see right down here. And then Houston's defense finished with 6.28 points. Next matchup here was game over for you against the beating Garrett and the Jets, 122.76 to 88.55. For game over for you, Lamar Jackson had himself a game. 27 0.64 fantasy points. A decent amount for passing, and then, of course, picked up right where he left off for rushing. Pretty efficient. Brees Hall, 10 carries for 4 yards. Yikes. Denver's defense came to play that game. 3.8 fantasy points here. ETN, only 11 for 50 for that. I believe he got hurt that game, but then came back in. But 1 reception for 10 yards for 7 points. Mike Evans, 8 for 94 and a touchdown. Rashee Rice, for 23.4. Rashee Rice got hurt during the game. ACL tear, basically might be done for the year. Wasn't able to get any points in that one. Kittle had himself a game too, like 4 for 45 and a touchdown. Jameson Williams had that one big play touchdown here. That's basically all he really did, but still finished with 16 fantasy points. It's still pretty good. That'll get you the points. Chris Boswell finished with 8. San Francisco's defense went nuclear today, and I'm sure they'll be defensive team of the week here for our league. 22.42 fantasy points. Shut down New England there. Josh Allen, they couldn't really do much. Only 5.3 fantasy points. I'm sure he'll have a bounce back game. Pollard ran the ball 4 yards a carry, 88 yards a touchdown. A couple of receptions here for 18.8. Mason picked up right where he left off. This is where I think he should be. 123 yards a touchdown, couple receptions, 37 yards for 25 points. Zay Flowers, I mean, when you're running the ball a lot, you're not really having to pass as much. But only a couple targets for him, which I'm sure that'll be different next game. Garrett Wilson, only 5 for 41, had that one fumble in the game for only 8.1. Cole Kmet, 3 for 34 for 6.4. Keon Coleman, 3 for 51 with 8 points. Group A had 7 points. Jets defense had 7.85 points in that close battle with Denver. Unfinished Business got his first win of the year with the 130.64 to 125.36 win over Witch Nasty. Unfinished Business started Jordan Love this game, and Jordan Love started slow at first, but then he picked up, and when he picked up in a hurry. Finished with 39.16 fantasy points. Kyren Williams basically is a touchdown machine, scoring a touchdown every game. It's kind of like what's his face? David Montgomery does basically the same thing. 20.4 fantasy points, 94 yards, touchdown, 4 receptions, 10 yards. James Cook only 5.8. They couldn't really get the offense going against Baltimore's defense. St. Brown with 22.78 points. He had 6 for 45 and a touchdown, and then he threw a 7-yard touchdown pass to Jared Goff, which was awesome. Deontay Johnson picked up right where he left off. Fantasy machine. As long as Andy Dalton is quarterback. 7 for 83 and a touchdown there. Gesicki didn't really do much. Only 1 catch for -9 yards. Yikes. But with T. Higgins coming back, he went down the pecking order, basically. Deebo Samuel came back, still posted a solid game for 10 fantasy points. Myers missed the 1 field goal, but finished with 2 points. And Kansas City's defense against the Chargers had 8.9 fantasy points. Meanwhile, for Witch Nasty, Caleb Williams, he had to start Caleb Williams. Just want to check, because Anthony Richardson was underperforming. Caleb Williams had himself 10 for 10.48. He had 17-23, 157 yards, a touchdown, and 5 for 12, a few sacks. But it wasn't as bad. He's going to face some tough teams. He's still a rookie. He's getting used to it. So it was 18. It usually takes 18 games for a rookie quarterback to figure stuff out. So, and then for here, not much you can do because, I mean, a lot of his guys were hurt already. Okay, a lot of his guys were hurt on the bench. Couldn't really start him. Mostert was out. He has Mixon too. Mixon was out that game. So yeah, but Chuba Hubbard went for 104 yards and touchdown, 4 receptions in the backfield there for 23.10 fantasy points. CeeDee Lamb, there you go. This is the CeeDee Lamb we need. 7 for 98, a touchdown. Few carries for 8 yards, but 23.6 fantasy points. That's nice. Ladd McConkey, starting to take over basically that offense. 5 for 67, a touchdown for 17 fantasy points. Basically 17, 18. Laporta had himself a decent game. 453 and a touchdown, or not a touchdown, for 9.3 fantasy points. Malik Neighbors was going off, was going nuclear. Like I said, when they stopped the run game, they were forced to pass a lot. 12 receptions for 115 yards for 24.1 fantasy points. I think I have to double check. Because I got him in my fantasy. I got Wan'Dale Robinson starting in my other fantasy league that I'm in. And I think he had like 11 receptions or something like that. That was nuts. Aubrey, again, double digits. Has been consistent. Double-digit points a game, 10 points. And then Philly's defense, only 7.08 fantasy points, even though they lost a bit. But yeah. Let's see here. And then looks like, let's see here. Looks like Hertz wins this one, 140.81 to 130.31 here for over Hot Pockets. Hot Pockets here, Janie Daniels with the start. Another dominating performance with 27.02 fantasy points. Again, completion percentage is nuts. 26 for 30 is nuts. For 233 and a touchdown here. Two-point conversion, 8 for 47 and a touchdown as well. Figured he would get some more touches, especially with Eckler out. Bijan Robinson only 11.4 fantasy points. Mondre Stevenson with 9.2 fantasy points. Metcalf here at 7 for 104 and a touchdown, or not a touchdown, a fumble loss, excuse me, for 17. Jerry Jeudy with 6 for 72 with 13 fantasy points. Kincaid is 5 for 47, 9.7 fantasy points. Tucker got the start today. He seemed to benefit last week when, excuse me here, when I think Adams was out. But he went 5 for 41, 15 fantasy points. Moody had 13 fantasy points, hit all his field goals and extra points. Cleveland's defense showed up as well for 13.99 fantasy points. And then for Hertz, the QB, was 13.32 fantasy points, kind of an underperforming game, but kind of hard to when your starting receivers, basically your good receivers, are out. But basically made up with Derrick Henry going nuclear for 199 yards and a touchdown for 3 receptions, 10 yards, and a touchdown on the receiving end. So like 36.90 fantasy points. And then Montgomery, again, getting a touchdown every single week, 40 yards, touchdown, that 1 reception for that 40-yard gain he had. Then Jamar Chase had himself that sick play where he broke out of the tackles and then just ran up the sidelines for the touchdown. 3 for 85 and a touchdown for 17 fantasy points. Stephon Diggs also stepped up in Tank Dell's absence for 5 for 69, had a carry for the 6-yard touchdown as well. For 18.5. And then Parkinson went 4 for 33 for 7. And then Pickens got a lot of targets towards the end, so like 7 for 113 for 18 fantasy points here. Sanders did all he could. He got 9 points out of the thing, which is still pretty good. And then Miami's defense with 4.99 fantasy points. Okay. And then Bird abides with his win today, 100.28 to 98.45 in a close battle here. Looks like for America, like Pat Mahomes finished with 13. Jonathan Taylor, 19.8 points with 88 yards at a touchdown and 3 for 20 on there. Still kind of hurt. Don't know if he's going to play, but if he doesn't, then Trey Sermon's a good pickup candidate. I'm sure you guys already had your waivers today. Some people do. But then Alvin Kamara still had another PPR day. 77 yards and a touchdown, but then 7 for 42. And then Christian Watson got hurt during that game as well. That injury looked nasty. If you didn't see it, go watch it. It was gruesome. And then Cooper went 4 for 35 for 7.5. Ferguson had 7 receptions for only 49 yards for 11.1 8.90. Mooney got the start in this one for 3 for 56, so 8.6 fantasy points. Tucker hit all 5 of his field goals for 5 points. The Dallas's defense had a little over their projected score for 7.75. For abides, we had Kyler Murray underperformed a little bit, but Washington's defense was on. Well, Washington's offense was on fire, and they basically had to try to keep up, but not much you can do really. But 7.98 points, he should have a bounce back game. Gibbs had 14 for 78 and 2 touchdowns for 19.8 fantasy points. He had himself a good one. Ford, 10 for 58, pretty efficient on the running game, and then 7 receptions out the backfield for 27. I feel like that's how it should be for Cleveland's backfield. But the window, I believe I saw a report too that the window was open on Nick Chubb's return, basically. Maybe it's just me, but it's crazy how he can come back from an injury that gruesome, but it's just not human. It's just an animal. But then Marvin Harrison had himself a good game, 5 for 45 and touchdowns, pretty solid, 15.5 fantasy points. DJ Moore was 3 for 22 and a touchdown for 11.2. Kyle Pitts didn't catch anything, a little 0 on the scoreboard here. And then Zach Moss had himself a game, 17.8 fantasy points, 51 yards rushing, 4 for 27 and a touchdown on the receiving end. Fairbairn had 6 fantasy points here, and then Pittsburgh's defense went 6.42 fantasy points. And then game of the evening, Gritty Fly won 168.58 to 124.70 over Saquon. Gritty's, it was his first win of the season, and also Saquon's first loss of the season. So at this moment, there's no undefeated person left, and there's also no winless team either. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of good. And of course he went off. All right, so for this week for Gritty Fly, Sam Darnold's the starting quarterback, 26.50, playing like an MVP, man. I mean, probably top 5 in the voting for sure. I don't know about you guys, but I mean he's definitely excuse me here, most improved player of the year for sure. Kenneth Walker, welcome back. Picked up right where he left off. This felt like he never even left. I mean, 80 yards, 12 carries for 80 yards, super efficient, 3 touchdowns, and then 4 receptions for 36 yards. And then Swift, about time. Swift. It's just he hasn't been doing much at all, and I'm sure some people benched him already. And of course, he goes off. I've heard that phrase plenty of times, but he finally went off this game. 16 for 93 and a touchdown, 7 receptions for 72 yards. For 29.5 fantasy points. Goodness. Keep it consistent and he'll do pretty well. Justin Jefferson still looking unstoppable. 6 for 85 and a touchdown for 20 fantasy points. Brandon Ayuk only 2 for 48 for 6.8. Kelsey, finally, he makes an appearance. I don't have him on my fantasy team, but goodness. 7 for 89 for 15.9. Then Higgins, first, not really much restrictions, but had 10 targets, 6 for 60 for 12 fantasy points. McPherson played pretty well, hit both his field goals and all of his extra points for 13 fantasy points. And then Vegas' defense, that was a good play this week for 10.8 against Cleveland here. And then for Saquon here, CJ Stroud had himself a good bounce back game here for 26.5, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns, a few carries for 17 yards. Saquon Barkley had 10 for 84, and then 2 receptions for 32 yards. Didn't really get any touchdowns, but still 13.6 ain't too bad either. Josh Jacobs, 9 carries, 51 yards, 4 receptions for 27 for 11.8. Addison, him back. It seemed like they didn't really have an answer for Addison this game, but carry for that touchdown, the 7-yard touchdown he had, and then 3 for 72 and a touchdown as well, the receiving game for 22.9 fantasy points. Chris Godwin, 6 for 69, 12.9 fantasy points. Goddard, with him basically being the main target, he went 7 for 62 for 13 fantasy points. J.K. Dobbins didn't have a good rushing game, but he for 32 yards rushing, but 3 for 30 on the receptions, or for PPR, kind of helps bring up his score a little bit. Butker missed the one field goal. Was it 65-yarder? I think he missed. But nailed both of his extra points. And then Baltimore's defense with 10.6, shutting down Buffalo here. Okay, so for weekly report time here, the best scoring team of the week was Gritty Fly for Vikai with 168.56, and then the worst scoring team for this week was Garrett and the Jets for 88.55. For players of the week, for the QB, for starting QB in our league, Jordan Love was the best one for 39.16. Derrick Henry led all running backs, 36.9. Collins for us was 34.10, led all receivers. Pratt Fryermuth led all tight ends, 16.7 fantasy points. Younghoe Koo led all ways with 20, all kickers with 20 fantasy points. And then for defense, it was San Francisco this time for 22.42. And then for the bench warmers of the week for our league, Fields was on the bench for 31.98 fantasy points. Hill was on the bench, for running backs for 21.6 fantasy points. Josh Downs led all receivers on the bench for 22.20. Otten led all tight ends for 11.20. And then the Bills defense, only one defense I think on the roster, but led with 3.43 fantasy points. And then for the awards here, lot of awards here. It looks like the excuse me. It looks like Gritty Fly takes home a few awards this week. He had the most efficient manager this week, almost 100%, almost 100% in his performance here. Out of him, let's see, 168.56 out of 172.88. Also had the biggest blowouts in that. Excuse me here, 44-point win over Saquon, and then of course his overachiever of the week too, with basically 50 points more than, or 50-60 points more than his starter projections. Couple other awards here. Looks like Garrett and the Jets. It looks like for least efficient manager it was Garrett and the Jets. Also had underachiever as well, finishing 20 points below his starter projection here. Hawk Pockets had the highest points in loss, in the 10-point loss that he had with 130.31. And then Birds of Bites takes home a couple of awards. It's the lowest points in a win with 100.28 and a couple-point win. And then also the Area Victory award as well. And then this is the performance here as well. You can take a look at it. You can pause the video if you want to take a look at it, but shows the highest scoring teams for the week. The gold is how much points they scored, and the grayish thing next to it is the max amount of points they could have gotten. So feel free to pause the video. All right, I'll take a look at the standings here. First standing here, we got Game Over For You leads with 3-1, followed by Ricky Bobby at 2-2, and Unfinished Business at 1-3. For the next division, we got Birds of Bites with 3-1, followed by excuse me here, I'm sorry, followed by Hawk Pockets and Gritty Fly at 1-3. Saquon leads this division at 3-1, followed by Amarika at 2-2, and Witch Nasty at 1-3. And then for the last division, Hertz leads with 3-1, and followed by Big Papa and Garrett at 2-2. Now, what I do is I take all these stats, take all the points scored, points allowed, records as well, and I take them, put them into a formula, and it spits out a score. So this score is going to be their power ranking score. So without further ado, let's check it. And these are the power rankings for leading into week number 5. We got Game Over For You leading the way with 1.29 fantasy points. Takes jumps up from 3 to 1. Bird Abides jumps up from 4 to 2 with 1.26 score. Couple spots there. Saquon with the loss dropped down a couple spots. Had a 1.25, but his score was a 1.247. Tied with him was Hurts at the 4th position, jumped up 3 spots after that huge win. But his score was a 1.245. And then next is Amarika. At the 5th spot, didn't really move, didn't go anywhere. He was a 1.01 fantasy points, but his score is a 1.007. And then tied with him was Gary and the Jets. He dropped down 4 spots in that loss with 1.01, but his score was a 1.006. And then Big Papa jumped up 3 spots to 7th with 1.00. Ricky Bobby dropped from 6 to 8 with a 0.99 score. Hawk Pockets had a point or dropped 1 spot to 0.075, but his score was a 0.0747. Tied with basically similar with Witch Nasty here, who also had a 7.75 score. Dropped down a spot, but his score was a 0.0746. And then Gritty Fly jumps up a spot here to 0.73. And then followed by Unfinished Business at the end. I mean, yeah, you get the win, but the blowouts, like I said, in this league, blowouts help your score a lot. So Unfinished Business, even though he got the win, 0.72 for his score. Okay, and we're looking at the matchups for Week 5 here. We got Big Papa taking on Birds Abides. We have Ricky Bobby taking on Hurts. We got Game Over for You taking on Witch Nasty. Unfinished Business taking on Amarika. We got Gritty Fly taking on Garrett. And we got Hot Pockets taking on Saquon. If I had to pick a matchup for Game of the Week, it will be Unfinished Business taking on Amarika. I think it could be an underrated high-scoring affair. Some people bouncing back from the games, and some people just picking up right where they left off. But yeah. Okay, that's all the time I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video, if you watched the whole video, please leave a like. Kind of helps out the channel a little bit. I know I'm still working with the kinks and stuff like that. But yeah, to my guys, good luck. And may the odds ever be in your favor. And then to everyone else, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And we'll talk to you soon.